start really by posing a question to people. Why is our city so unsustainable? Why is our city so unaffordable? And the definitive answer to that question really has been given to me during my time in the New South Wales Parliament. Our city is an extension of power. The way that power is expressed in the Parliament and expressed in our communities. And the dominant power is the power of the development industry, the lobbyists, as well as so many corporate donors who influence so dramatically our political process. There are notable exceptions to that, but that's our challenge. Our challenge is how do we change that system to make it more environmentally focused and people focused. I've seen the huge influence that donors and lobbyists have had, and you've seen also the most recent corruption scandals here in New South Wales. And so whenever I talk about how we create sustainable, livable cities, it's always about this issue of clean politics. The first port of call is always, how do we have a vibrant and vigorous democracy where communities are really engaged, where consultation is actually genuine, where people have a real right to speak their mind and also support their own communities. Because without clean politics, any way to address our city in a sustainable manner is fatally flawed. That's why we Greens in the State Parliament, and so many Greens here, are taking up that fight to make sure that we support ICAP, we get rid of the politicians' rorts, that we make sure that the political donation system is transformed root and branch. And for the Greens here in New South Wales, that's culminated in our Clean Politics Charter, which I invite you all to visit. Go online, you can just Google it, and have a look at what we're saying in the Parliament about how we need to clean up politics. Well, we've had some successes. I want to talk a little bit about the classic example of what's wrong with politics here in New South Wales, and go no further than Paco's Casino at Barangaroo. That was the most disgraceful capitulation by Labor. Crown Casino simply employed two former General Secretaries. Carl Batar was employed, and we know that Mark Uppitt was employed, and Labor rolled over. The coalition, subject to the pressure as they are from the development industry and how they do business, thought it was a great idea to give one of the most valuable licences a state can deliver, worth over $1 billion, to this company with no tender, no competitive process, and the Greens were the only party that was standing up to that. The irony was that there was me, a Green, who was supposedly so out of touch with the real world, who was reading from the Financial Review's editorial, saying even the Financial Review says this is a disgrace, that you can undersell this licence, which is worth over $1 billion to this state, without a tender. That is at the heart of everything that's wrong with politics in this state. The influence peddling, the power of the lobbyists, and the capitulation of Labor and Liberal to the strength of this industry. We're seeing more as the lights dim. It's going to get worse, ladies and gentlemen. But the power of this industry is important, and what we've seen, and just as an aside on that issue, it's important to remember that this whole issue, this whole Barangaroo development was run out of one person's office, the Premier's office. Our now disgraced former Premier, who has been implicated in this corruption issue at ICAC. It wasn't run by the Department of Planning, by the Premier's office. And that concentration of power that we saw there, we saw under Labor with Part 3A of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, where the Minister had the personal right, the personal power to approve or refuse any development application. And that's why we need to be promoting more democracy, not less. And we see it again writ large in one of the most important things for the development of any city, and that's transport. Everything hangs off the transport infrastructure. And what's the biggest development in this state's history that is starting at the moment, the planning process? WestConnex. $13+ billion on a tollway which will cement, literally and figuratively, will cement dependency on car culture for generations to come. And this is an example of a mega project which the development industry, the finance industry, the infrastructure industry are delighted in, but it's a project which will lock people into car dependency, $14 tolls to get into the city, and in particular impact on those people in Western Sydney who have been crying out for public transport solutions. Now, we've been able to make some progress. I don't want to be all negative. We've been making some progress. Our light rail campaign, 10 years of campaigning, to get the light rail extended to Dulwich Hill. We've transformed the paradigm of how governments think about light rail, and we're now seeing more and more extensions. And when it comes to property, I wanted to mention in just a few minutes a situation about property in this state. There is no housing market that works. It might work for the developers where there's plenty of profit, but it doesn't work for any sort of social objective in terms of affordability, in terms of sustainability. And that's why we need to be working to make sure that we can have a development system that works for communities and works for the environment. And again, what that says is what you know the Greens are standing for: returning powers to local communities, making sure that we have a development system that we can trust and respect. And that's why we need to not only be changing laws, but we need to be engaging people in our local communities, getting them empowered and active on these issues to make sure that we can support the kind of development that we know we need, but the kind of development which is good for our social community as well as our environmental community. Lee mentioned public housing, and whenever we talk about the city, we need to talk about transport. Our focus on public transport, on housing, about communities being involved in decision making and not letting donors decide on the future of development. But when it comes to housing, I always emphasise public housing. Under Labor, thousands of public housing dwellings were sold. And the disgrace about it is when they left government, there was a $300 million backlog in maintenance. So not only were people living in public housing situations across the state, but they were in situations where their houses were literally falling down around their ears. And that is something the Coalition is now accelerating. And when you challenge them about it, they say, well, this is what Labor did. They sold houses, so why can't we? That's why we Greens stand for a different paradigm. We stand for a system that says that housing is a right, not a privilege, and the way to actually build sustainable communities is to build social justice at the heart of everything we do. And that is why I'm involved in politics. That is why I'm here, because I know there is a better way. And I know that when it comes to the community, when we work with communities, when we engage with our communities, and we empower our communities, that we get the best possible outcomes. I've seen that in my time, 13 years on local council, as a mayor also of my local council, that we can get the development results that we want. We can get more housing. We can get more housing. We can get sustainable housing, and we can plan effectively for the future. But the solution to building sustainable cities is not about me, and it's not about politicians. In fact, the future for our cities has always only ever been about people like you. Whether it's the green bands, or whether it's the protection of our heritage communities, it's up to people like you. Without you, I, and people like me, and the Greens will definitely fail. And that's why we need your support. We need you to be able to participate. And in my last 2 minutes, I wanted to give you just a little story about the Glebe Youth Service. The Glebe Youth Service is on Glebe Point Road. 90% of the people that use it are Aboriginal people in the community. And I got a call from the convener of that service who rang me and said, we're just going to evict it, Jamie. The Department of Housing has evicted us. They said, there's a $2 million fire upgrade that's needed. The truth is they're trying to sell the buildings because they're desperately trying to fill the deficit in public housing by selling more and more buildings. And it was the community that rallied. It was the community that came together. We letterboxed, of course. I spoke at public meetings. We moved the motion to get a rally. All Green MPs have to have a rally, right? Let's have a rally. And we had a fantastic protest in the main street in Glebe Point Road. We've got residents, public housing residents, who never win anything. But our lives generally are lives of unlucky situations, of disadvantage and lost opportunities. But we had this amazing opportunity where we brought everyone together, and it was a wonderful evening just a few short weeks ago when we held a barbecue down there at Glebe Youth Service as the Glebe Youth Service was returned and the government finally capitulated and that service was able to continue. And what happened after that is so many residents came to me and said, oh, I've got a problem with my roof. Should we have a protest? I'm like, yes, we should. Let's do that. Because when people's voices come together, we can make great things happen. And I want to encourage you to do something today. You'll see these little leaflets on your chair. This talks a little bit about the future for our city and this state in the coming year. In March there'll be an election, and that obviously will be an important point, and I encourage you to look at how you can support our campaign and you can contribute. And if you're not a member of the Greens, I encourage you to do that. But more importantly, in your own communities, get involved in activities in your own communities where you can. Support candidates you know that are fighting the power of the corporate dollar in this state, and make sure that you can make a real difference, because as I said at the beginning, this whole effort, these successes that we've made, these victories that we've achieved, members elected to state parliament, even though there's only one, for example, in the lower house, and the forces of darkness are strong, we can make a really significant impact. And so I really encourage every single one of you today, before you leave, fill the form in, let us know what you can do. Some people can cook, some people can letterbox, some people can donate money. Because any future campaign we have will rely on you to make it successful. So thank you so much for coming along here today. I'm really excited to hear from Jenny and from Scott as well, who will be talking a little bit more in detail about what kind of future city we want. But I'm so encouraged to see so many people here, and I really look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.